Good evening and welcome to this evening's Dhamma sharing here at the Buddhist Mahavihara's Dhammadana series. And this evening we are glad and fortunate to have a monk from Sri Lanka who will be talking to us regarding the uh, continuous discussion on the Dhammapada. And this evening we are going to discuss chapter 1, verse 5 and 6 of the Dhammapada. Now, this Bhante has already covered the other verses, in chapter 1. So Bhante has covered verse 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this evening we are going to do verse 5 and 6. And without much ado, I would now like to invite Bhante Katagoda Pesala to join us. Good evening, Bhante. Welcome to Buddhist Mahavihara's Dhammadana series.
Good evening, Mahathya.
You can hear me, right?
Yeah, of course, I can
Okay,
hear you
okay,
properly.
great. As you know, we're very glad and fortunate that we had to have you with us this evening. Even though Sri Lanka is having numerous power cuts, we hope there will be no power cuts this evening and we can carry on with our program as scheduled. So without wasting much time, let me introduce Bhante to those of you who are new to this evening's Dhamma sharing and lead Bhante's profile to you. Uh, Bhante Katagoda Pesalatero was born in Velimada, Sri Lanka, and he completed his formal education at the Central College at Velimada. He then served as an officer in the Sri Lankan Army and obtained a 3-year diploma in hospitality management from the Sri Lankan Institute of Hotel Management in Colombo. He changed his path towards spirituality and developed a keen interest in learning the Buddha Dhamma, and this aspiration made him join the Buddha Sasana and become a Buddhist monk under the tutelage of Venerable Man-Kadavala Sudassana Thero and Venerable Man-Kadavala Nandaratana Thero, as well as Venerable Kottamale Kumara Kassapa Thero at the Labu Noruva Kanda Monastery in Sri Lanka, where he started studying the Tripitaka and Pali languages and also received his higher ordination in 2020. Now, as a resident monk at the Labunurowa Kanda Monastery, he currently takes part in Dhamma discussions, preaching, monastery activities, and furthering his studies in the Dhamma towards gaining a deeper knowledge and understanding in the Buddha's teachings. And this evening, Bhante will be talking about the Dhammapada chapter 1, as I mentioned, verse 5 and 6, which was entitled Hatred is Overcome Only by Non-Hatred. So without much ado, Bhante, I'd like to invite you to start this evening's Dhamma sharing here at the Dhammadana series.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Nahi verena verāni sammantī'dha kudācanaṃ Averena cha sammanti esa dhammo sanantano Pare chana vijānanti mayamettha yamāmase ye cha tattha vijānanti tato sammanti medhagāti. May my homage to the Blessed One, the Dhamma and the Sangha. Good evening, all of you, my dear Dhamma friends. For today evening also, I would like to welcome all of you around the world for this Dhamma discussion. As Brother Tilak explained, so far we have discussed 4 verses of Dhammapada. And before begin today's discussion, if I have a recapitulation of our last sessions, it will make easy for you to understand today's Dhamma session. So at the beginning, we talked from the first verse that in Buddhism teaches us the mind is the main thing. Mind is the forerunner of everything. So there we have learned that. So if our mind polluted with negative trends, unwholesome things, if our mind get polluted, then we learn that we have to suffer because of impure mind. And second verse, we learn that if we can clear our mind with wholesome trends, or else wholesome trends in our mind like alobha, advesa, amoha. Those are, if I explain in English, alobha mean against the greediness, that is alobha mean non-greediness. And advesa mean against hatred, advesa mean non-hatred. That is also known as loving kindness, compassion, that kind of mental trends. And also amoha mean without having ignorance, delusion, the ability of understanding or discerning things in the world, that is called amo. So if one practices these kind of positive or wholesome trends, his mind begin to purify. So if he can completely elaborate, completely eradicate those negative trends, and if one can completely practice these positive trends in your mind, you can have a happy mind. And if you have that happy mind, you can spend a happy life. That's the main thing. That's the main thing we have learned so far. So before we learn those things, there are some special factors to be reminded for you all. When we are dealing with Lobha Desa Moha, as Buddhism is a causal and effect teachings, because Buddha teaches us when there are causes appears, then we have to face effects also. When there are causes, if you can eradicate it, then the effects we can eradicate. So in our mind, Lobha Dvesa Moha is there, is appeared, then we have to suffer, as I explained. So before we eradicate them, we must know what are Lobha Dvesa Moha. What is the nature of them? What are the nature of those negative aspects? So in Buddhism, it teaches us the Dvesa. Dvesa is the most outermost part of those three kilesas. And the second one is the Lobha. And the most subtle one is the Moha, or the ignorance, delusion. It is very difficult to eradicate. In Dvesa, there's a Pali term that is called, it is Dvesa, Mahasavajya. Mahasavajya and Danda Viraga, Kippa Viraga. That means when you have the Dvesa in your mind, it will do a much harm. And Kippa Viraga means, but though it is doing a much harm to your mind, you can easily eradicate. That is because when the anger, hatred, ill will appears in your mind, you can easily identify. So that is why it is easy for you to eradicate the hatred. And the Lobha, it is called, it is very subtle to understand. So it is difficult to eradicate. When the Lobha is appears in your mind, it will, with compared to the Dvesa, it will do a less harm. But Moha is the most subtle thing, that when the Moha is appeared in your mind, that is called Mahasavajya, also Danda Viraga. That means when the Moha appears in our mind, it will do a much harm, and also it is very difficult to understand. That is called Danda Viraga. That is why the Moha is the most difficult thing to be eradicated. So up to now, so far, in the fourth and third and fourth verses, we learned about how Dvesa acts. When the Dvesa, or the hatred, anger, ill will appears in our mind, and if we are not practicing mindfulness, we don't know that hatred appeared in our mind. So that is why Satipatthana, or it is in English, it is called as mindfulness. That is why we practice mindfulness. When you are mindful, you begin to see your mental trendings. If there's a negative trend, you can identify. Also, if you have a positive trend, that also you can identify. When you know that there is a negative trends appears in your mind, you can eradicate them. And when you know that you have a positive trends in your mind, you can develop them up to the maximum. That is the use of mindfulness. That is why as Buddhists we should practice mindfulness. So when you mindfully living, and when you identify the hatred from the beginning, if you cannot deal with the hatred, it will bring you huge repercussions in future. So the fifth and sixth verses giving you the examples of such hatred. So the fifth verse, as I said, the meaning of the verse I will explain in the latter part. So before that, let's go to the story. The story also happens in Savatthi. uh, the Buddha spent 45 years of his Dhamma service to the sentient beings. So, out of 45 years, with Mahakaruna, means the greater compassion towards the all beings, he spent 24 years in Savatthi. Most of the time, the Buddha spent at Savatthi. So, this story also happened when Buddha living in Savatthi. The Buddha spoke this verse with reference to a certain woman who was barren and another capable of bearing a child. The story in between two women, one who can bear a child, another who cannot bear a child. Once there lived a household whose wife was barren, being unable to bear a child and afraid that she would be mistreated by her husband and her mother-in-law. She arranged for her husband to marry another woman. That is a very important lesson here, that with suspicious mind, we should not take decisions. If we take decision with suspicious mind, unknowingly, it will bring us suffering. So it will elaborated nicely with this story. So the first woman, she arranged her husband a second marriage. That is because she feared that if I stay without children in future, my husband and my grandmother-in-law, she will be mistreated. So by having that suspicion in mind, she took the decision, and that same decision make her suffering a lot. So she arranged for her husband second marriage with another woman. But on two occasions, as soon as she knew the first barren woman, as soon as she knew the second wife was pregnant, the barren wife gave her food mixed with poisonous mixture, causing her to have miscarriages. Though she arranged that marriage, but when the second wife having children, when she begins to see that she is going to have children, enmity begins her mind. The barren wife's mind polluted with enmity. So she gave her poisonous mixture, and two times she did the miscarriage to the second wife. But on her third pregnancy, the pregnant wife, kept it to herself without informing the barren wife. But when the latter came to know about it, she again caused an abortion. Eventually, the second wife died when she giving the childbirth, because the third time that wife, when she giving the birth, the fetus is little bit matured. So it is very difficult for her to do the delivery because the fetus is mature. So because of that, while delivering the birth, wife also had to die. Before her death, the unfortunate woman was filled with hatred and vowed vengeance on the barren wife and her future offsprings. So, see how the hatred begins in the being's minds. So, then the husband got to know about the matter, and what he did was he did kill the other barren woman also. Thus, feud or long standing mutual hostility started. Among their later existence, two were reborn as one time both of the ladies were born as hen and a female cat. So that female cat ate hen's eggs two times, and third time that female cat ate both hen and the eggs. And another time, a dew and a leopard. Dew mean female deer and a leopard. They were born as. That leopard two times ate the cubs of female deer, and third time the leopard ate both the cubs and the female deer. And finally, when the Buddha appeared to this world, both of the ladies were born as one born as the daughter of the nobleman, and the latter or the second born as a evil spirit, as a ogress. She born as. So one day she named as Kali Yakini. Yakini mean evil spirit. Yakini mean it's a Pali term, evil spirit. One day, that evil spirit was in pursuit of the nobleman's daughter and her baby. So in this life also, the practice was continuing. So that evil spirit, as a ogress, she was in pursuit of the nobleman's daughter and her baby. When this lady heard that the Buddha was giving a religious discourse at the Jetavana monastery, she fled to him and placed her son at his feet for protection. Luckily, Buddha appeared, so she, that nobleman's daughter, she get to know about the Buddha, and she ran to the Buddha with her baby. The evil spirit was prevented from entering the monastery. That is very special thing, my dear friends, when the Buddha available. And if you are practicing, if your life got refuge of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, and if your life is noble, then normally even evil spirits, they cannot disturb you. In the similarly, so this evil spirit also cannot enter to the Buddha's monastery. So she was later called in, and both, but after some time, the evil spirit Buddha let her to enter the monastery. So entering the monastery, she was later called in both, and the lady and the evil spirit were admonished by the Buddha. Buddha asked both the ladies to come inside and admonish them. The Buddha told them about their past trouble as rival wives and how they had been harboring hatred toward each other. Luckily, Buddha advised them how their rival or the vengeance began. They were made to see that hatred could only cause more hatred. So, by giving past life stories, Buddha made them understand how the hatred continues up to this life, and that could be only ceased through friendship, understanding, and goodwill. Both realized their mistake, and on the admonition of the Buddha, made their peace with each other. The Buddha then requested woman to hand over her son to the evil spirit. Fearing for the safety of her son, she hesitated. But because of her devotion and confidence in the Buddha, she did hand over her son to the evil spirit or the ogress. The child was warmly received by the evil spirit. After kissing and caressing the child tenderly like her own son, she handed back child to his mother. the evil spirit under the Buddha's influence, she got very kind and very kindly she handled the baby. After kissing and caressing, she handed over the baby again to the mother. As a result, there was no more hatred occurred in between them in future. So, in that occasion, the Buddha preached this verse that is called Nahi verena verāni sammantī'dha kudācanaṃ Averena sammanti esa dhammo sanantano. Nahi verena verāni means with hatred, anger, ill will, vengeance. If you want to overcome them, then we also practicing hatred, anger, ill will, vengeance, this type of thing. We cannot overcome them. It is like when there's a fire, if you put more fuel, what will happen? The fire will develop or increase, enhance. You cannot extinguish it. But instead, if you can add some fire extinguisher or some water, you can appease the fire or distinguish the fire. Similarly, when your mind burning with hatred, vengeance, anger, ill will, that kind of negative mental trends, if you can practice loving kindness with mindfulness, with the mindfulness, you can, if you can practice loving kindness, metta, karuna, mudita, those type of great mahaviharas, then you can appease the or the extinguish the burning of hatred. That is the simple meaning of that story. Those who attempt to conquer hatred by hatred are like warriors who take weapons to overcome others who bear arms. This does not end hatred but gives room to grow. As I explained, hatred will give the room for hatred to grow, increase. But ancient wisdom has advocated a different timeless strategy to overcome hatred. This eternal wisdom is to meet hatred with non-hatred. The method of trying to conquer hatred through hatred never succeeds in overcoming hatred. But the method of overcoming hatred through non-hatred is eternally effective. Eternally effective. That is why that method is described as eternal wisdom. When you practice loving kindness, you cannot have hatred. It is an eternal truth. That means everlasting. It is applicable for today's world, even in the past, even in the future. At any time, these principles are applicable, suitable. That is why it is said, it is an eternal truth. So, the principle revealed in this verse is clear. Quarrels can be never come to an end by quarreling. War can never end through further wars. Enmity never ends by returning enmity for enmity. Only by giving up anger, enmity, quarreling, and wars can these evils be stopped. It through friendliness, forgiving, and forgetting that enmity ceases. So that is a very good lesson for these days. We could see how the world burns with hatred. It is about to become another world war type of thing. So, of course, as persons, as Buddhists, we cannot force them forcefully. We cannot make them understand. But one thing we can do instead of controlling the world, of course, you yourself, I myself can control my mind by practicing loving kindness. So it is a better practice, better habit that if we can practice loving kindness, so it eventually will allow others to to have a peaceful mind around us. Then if lots of people practicing loving kindness, it continuously gradually increase up to the world. It can be all can be benefited if we can practice loving kindness. So then let's begin to the second story, second verse, that means the sixth one. This was happened between two groups of monks, even during the Buddha's time. So it is very important with this story, my dear friends, that we think that at present this modern world is so polluted. But dear Dhamma friends, the negative trends of the mind, as Lobodesumuha, it is equally applicable at any time. So this is very perfect example. Even in front of the Buddha, some monks were arguing, quarreling each other, even in front of the Buddha. So it doesn't matter the time. When your mind have the anger in the past, or in the present, or in the future, you begin to quarrel. It doesn't matter the time. So the time is irrelevant for us. So this is the time for us to practice loving kindness. So let's go with the story. While residing at the Jetavana monastery, Savatthi, the Buddha uttered this verse. This incident also happened in Savatthi with reference to the monks of Kosambi. They are known as monks of Kosambi. Kosambi means that the place where they are lived. The monks of Kosambi had formed into two groups. They formed into two groups. Even in front of the Buddha, they created groups. That was the nature of the polluted minds, dear Dhamma friends. The monks of Kosambi had formed into two groups, and one group followed the master of Vinaya and the other followed the teacher of Dhamma. So even nowadays also, we can see some monks, they are interested to follow Vinaya. Vinaya means the disciplinary code of the Buddha. And some monks like to follow the Dhamma, Abhidhamma, Dhamma. So in between them, there are some arguments. It is even these days also that is happening. Only the wise one, only those who have taken the essence of the Dhamma will know how to deal with it. But others don't just reading the words without taking the essence. They arguing each other. So these two groups, they were quarreling each other. Even the Buddha could not stop them from quarreling. So what the Buddha did was, he left them and spent the Vassana retreat in the monsoon season all alone in Rakita group near Pare forest. That there was a forest named as Pare. Pare means where there was an elephant, big elephant lived there, and that is why that forest known as Pare forest. So Buddha went there, and Buddha decided to spend his Vassana retreat over there. So there, the elephant Pare waited upon the Buddha. The lay disciples of Kosambi, on learning reason for the departure of the Buddha, refused to make offerings to the remaining monks. So the people who around, the lay people who sponsored to the bhikkhus and the Buddha, they got to know that Buddha left the Jetavana monastery, that because of the monks. So the people or the laymen, they refused to make offerings to the Sangha. So this made them realize that their mistake, and reconciliation took place among themselves. So when they are not receiving enough food, shelter, medicine and things, they begin to understand their mistake. So they reconcile between them. Still, the lay disciples would not treat them as respectfully as before until they owned up their fault to the Buddha. But the Buddha was away, and it was in the middle of the Vassana season. So the monks of Kosambi spent the Vassana season in misery and hardships. At the end of the Vassana season, the Venerable Ananda and many monks approached the Buddha and gave the message from Anathapindika. Anathapindika means the chief sponsor of the Buddha. So he asked the monks to meet the Buddha and bring him to the monastery. So Anathapindika and other lay disciples imploring him to return. In due course, the Buddha returned to the Jetavana monastery in Savatthi. The monks followed him there fell down at his feet and admitted their fault. The Buddha rebuked them for disobeying him. He told them to remember that they must all some die someday, and therefore they must stop their quarrels and must not act as if they would never die. So, in that occasion, the Buddha told the sixth verse, that is, Pare vijānanti, mayamettha yamāmase, tattha vijānanti, tato sammanti medhagā. That means, Pare vijānanti, mayamettha yamāmase. Those who don't know that one day we all have to die, they were quarreling each other. But those who know that we are going to die, they won't continue with the hatred, quarreling, and that kind of thing. They won't continue because they all know that we all someday we all have to die. So most of us are not willing to face the reality of impermanence and death. So that is very important, that when you have situations like quarreling, arguments, and other feuds amongst you all, at that time you can reflect that we all going to die. Whether we like or not, we have to face that scenario. So when you reflect in that way, it is a very best weapon for you to stop your anger and quarreling. Those type of negative things you can act when you practice, when you know that you all going to die someday. So it is because we forget this fact that our lives are transitory, that we quarrel with each other as if we are going to live forever. But if we face the fact of death, our quarrels will become to an end. We will then realize the folly of fighting when we ourselves are doomed to die, assured of death as outcome. Excited by emotions, our thought being clouded, we cannot see the truth about life. When we see the truth, however, our thoughts become free of emotions. So, those negative aspects like hatred, anger, ill will, those are negative emotions of the mind. And if we can practice, as I said, we can identify them and we can deal with them. Then, from the beginning, at the initial stage, if you can deal with them and if you can remove them, in future lives, it won't enhance, it won't increase up to the higher level. Like tree, when you plant a seed on the ground, if it keeps naturally growing, at times after a long time it will become a huge tree. At that time, if one wants to remove that tree, he has to take much effort, huge effort. But in the beginning, if he needs to remove that, easily it can be done. So similarly, when our mind polluted with anger, hatred, ill will, that kind of negative trends, at the initial stage, at the beginning, if you can deal with them, we can easily eradicate them as the sapling eradicated, as I say. So the essence of Buddhism is facing the reality of death and impermanence. Why we are suffer? Because we run away from reality, carried away by emotions. Emotions are in conflict with reality. Therefore, they are bound to be thwarted, to cause fail, to frustrate, to prevent by reality. So, as Buddhists, we understand emotionally we shouldn't take decisions. As the first story I explained, that woman, she took that decision to have a second wife for her husband. He took that decision with emotional mind. She took that decision. That is why that quarrel begin from that life and it ends up with the Buddha after so many lives. So luckily, but if our mind polluted with hatred and if we live with the hatred and if we enhance the hatred up to the vengeance kind of things and if we begin to quarrel with each other, so we won't get any help from anyone. So not only in this life, even in future lives. If it continues, we have to suffer a lot. So generally, people are not aware that death will overtake them by one day. They act unmindful of this universal truth, both monks and laymen. Very important factor is there, my Dhamma friends, that is that even for the monks, even for the laymen, it doesn't matter to practice Dhamma. It is not important to become a monk. Of course, it is easy when you become a monk, you can practice easily. But this Dhamma practice is not only for the monks, it is especially for the lay people also. In Buddha's time, there were some lay people. They got the higher fruits like anagami, that means non-returner, and the enlightenment. Even before the uh, monks, they got the ability. So this teachings is not only for the monks, it is for every human being, not only for the Buddhist even. Even one from other religion, if he can go through with this Dhamma, it is very impartial. It can be applicable for any kind of being, any kind of religion. It can be practiced. So, unmindful of death and considering themselves as immortals are often heedless. Heedless means unaware, without noticing, careless, inattentive. That is called heedlessness. In cultivating virtues, they engage themselves in strife and arguments and are often dejected with their hopes and aspirations shattered. At times, they postpone their work with the hope of doing it on a grand scale in the future and end up without being able to do anything. That is very important factor, my dear Dhamma friend, where I could see most of the people, even the monks, they are postponing their Dhamma practice. If I could remember, I have asked from some lay people, Mr. When you are going to practice Dhamma, when you are going to practice mindfulness. At that time, they told me that, Bhante, in future, after finishing my everything, every works, after uh, taken care of my children, when I have the free time, I will come to the Dhamma. Until that time, I have to wait. So it is, they say, they say that is because they are not aware of the Dhamma. This Dhamma practice is not for tomorrow or after month or after year. Right now you have to practice, because as I explained, if we know that we are going to die someday, it may happen just a few moments back. So we have to practice right now. When you practice mindfulness, when you practice loving kindness, when you go through the Dhamma path, only you will get the freedom. While living without Dhamma, you can never have the freedom to follow the Dhamma. If there's a freedom, then no need of having Dhamma path. Dhamma path is there for us to find that freedom. So that we have to understand. Therefore, it is only proper that one should daily reflect on death. Being mindful of death is central to the Buddhist way of understanding the real nature of life. There are people in this world, people in various walks of life, who resent the very word death, let alone reflect on it. Some people even very fear to hear the word death. But just think, my dear friends, every one of us, one day or other, somehow, whether we like or not, we have to face. That is an obvious thing. So, whatever we have, whatever we don't have, we have to die one day. So, it is very good reflect. We are not just reflecting on a fault thing, wrong thing. It is obvious. It is, of course, it will happen for all of us. At that time, we have to leave everything. So that is why we practice that. So, uh, infatuated by long life, good health, youth, and prosperity, they completely forget the fact that they are subject to death. Immersed in the evanescent means disappearing, vanishing. Pleasure of the fivefold senses, they seek only material satisfaction in this world, completely disregarding a future life and indulging in vice through the mind, body, and speech. They regard this impermanent and evanescent life as permanent and everlasting. It is to arouse the sense of dissatisfaction in such blind and ignorant people to allay the pangs of sorrow caused by the separation of parents and children and from wealth and property, to inculcate the doctrine of impermanence in all beings and thereby convince them of the unsatisfaction of life and direct them towards the attainment of everlasting peace. That the Buddha preached these words. A person who has not comprehended the doctrine of the Buddha is infatuated by long life and considers himself as immortal. Even though he may see many deaths around him, he is infatuated by good health and considers himself free from disease, even though he may see countless deceased persons around him. So, under the corona period and also during this wartime, we could see there are lots of people are dying. So that gives us the message that we also one day have to face that death. So it's a sign. So when we take those signs mindfully, wisely, and we can reflect on them, then we can create a peaceful mind. He is infatuated by youth, even though he may see many aged persons and considers himself as one who is not subjected to old age. He is infatuated by wealth and prosperity, even though he may see countless persons rendered destitute, lacking money, poor, impoverished through loss of wealth, and he never thinks for a moment that he too might be subjected to such a state. So at anywhere we are living, we may live in different locations, we may following different teachings, we may have different positions, but all one we have, all of us one day or other have to die. So by keep them into our mind, we can have the encouragement to practice the Dhammapada. So uh, by practicing Dhamma in this way, you can begin right now, practice loving kindness. And when you have the loving kindness towards the world people, it of course make you a chance to reduce your unwholesome acts, unwholesome trends in your mind like hatred. So today, Dhamma sermon, we talked about the hatred, and when we dealing with hatred, at the beginning, we can identify the hatred and deals with them with mindfulness, then we can easily remove the hatred, and we can have the happiness. So, with that, I would like to end of today's Dhamma session. Dear Dhamma friends, if you have any doubts and if you need to anything clarify, this is the time.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you for that interesting expounding of the Dhammapada verses 5 and 6. Uh, I just checked on the comment section of our Facebook pages. There are no questions at the moment, and we're also very grateful and lucky that you are able to conduct the Dhamma sharing without a power failure. I was actually fretting at the background, hoping there will be no power failure, and luckily for us, there is no power failure at the moment. And since there are no questions from the audience this evening, let me just do a last check and see. Yep, there are no questions. So can we then, Bhante, now proceed to the Anumodana?
So, with that, we are going to end this Dhamma session. So, before end of this Dhamma session, I would like to share all the merits that I accrued via this Dhamma sermon to all the beings. First of all, I would like to share all these merits to my teachers, especially my teacher, Venerable Mankadaval Sudassana Thera, and my teacher, Venerable Mankadaval Nandaratana Thera, and Venerable my teacher, Mankadaval Kothmali Kumar Kaspathero. I would like to share all the merits to them, and by sharing these merits, by invoking these merits, may they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana soon. And also, I would like to share all these merits to the all celestial beings who are living in the human world as well as six other deity celestial worlds. May they partake, may they share these merits, and may they have the happy life, and may they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. And also, I would like to share all these merits to those who have participated, those all of those who have participated in this Dhamma discussion, and I would like to share all the merits to all beings. Those who like to share, they may invoke with these merits, and they may have peaceful lives. They may live freely without suffering, and finally, they also, with these merits and with the infinite noble qualities of triple gems, may all of them be able to free from this samsaric journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you for conducting the Anumodana. So with that, we have come to the end of this evening's Dhamma sharing here at the Dhammadana series. And on behalf of the Committee of Management, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Bhante Pesala Thera for conducting this evening's Dhamma sharing called Dhammapada Chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. And also to our sponsors this evening. May they, if they are in the position to receive this merits, may they also share these merits with us for sponsoring. And also to our viewers this evening, if you are happy to have listened to this evening's Dhamma sharing, you can also go back to our Facebook page, the BMV Dhammadana series on YouTube, and listen to the previous two Dhamma sharings by Bhante Pesala on the verses 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 as well. And we look forward to Bhante Pesala's next sharing, which will be on the verses 7 and 8, which will be conducted sometime in probably April. Yeah. So we have come to the end of March. So we have done this to ensure that Bhante Pesala and monks in his monastery are able to join us every month, and it's also part of their training to improve their English and as well as to get acquainted with audiences around the world, so that they become good Dhamma practitioners. So Bhante, thank you once again, and we look forward to your next Dhamma sharing sometime soon. So Kihotu, and good night and a pleasant evening one and all.
Okay, good night. Triple J bless you all.